The gunshot echoed through Clearwater Springs like a clap of thunder, startling Nora O'Malley from her work at the washboard. She froze, soap suds dripping from her raw hands, as her 5-year-old daughter Emma came running around the corner of their modest cabin. "Mama, what was that?" Emma's eyes were wide, her little hands clutching the threadbare doll Nora had sewn for her last Christmas. "Nothing to fret about, sweetheart, just someone hunting, likely." Nora wiped her hands on her apron and forced a reassuring smile. The year was 1876, and gunfire wasn't uncommon in this frontier town nestled in the Colorado territories. But something about this shot felt different. Nora knelt down and brushed Emma's dark curls from her face curls just like her father's. The thought of William still brought a painful tightness to her chest, 3 years after the fever had taken him. 3 years of struggling alone, of whispers behind her back, of suspicion about a young widow raising a child without family. "Go on inside and finish your letters." "I'll be there shortly." Nora watched as Emma scampered into their cabin, then turned her attention to the town's main street, where a commotion was building. A man on horseback was galloping toward the sheriff's office, dust billowing behind him. The stagecoach was due today. Perhaps there had been trouble. Trouble meant injuries, and injuries meant work for a midwife with healing skills. Work meant food on their table, no matter what the townsfolk thought of her, Mrs. Wilkins. Nora called to her elderly neighbor who was peering curiously from her porch. "Would you mind keeping an eye on Emma for a bit? I think my skills might be needed in town." The old woman nodded without enthusiasm. Mrs. Wilkins was one of the few who still spoke to Nora, though even she kept a careful distance. A woman alone was suspicious enough, but a woman who knew herbs and healing was whispered about in darker terms. Nora hurried inside to grab her medicine bag. "Emma, I need to go into town. Mrs. Wilkins will watch you. Mind your manners, please." Emma looked up from her slate, chalk dust on her fingers. "Can't I come, Mama? I don't like being without you." The words twisted in Nora's heart. Emma had few friends. The other children weren't allowed to play with her. The daughter of a widow who refused to remarry or leave town was somehow tainted in the eyes of Clearwater Springs. "Not today, love. I'll be back before supper." She kissed Emma's forehead and crossed the small yard to Mrs. Wilkins' cabin. By the time Nora reached Main Street, a crowd had gathered outside the sheriff's office. She pushed her way through, ignoring the mutters and the way people stepped aside as if her touch might contaminate them. Sheriff Dale stood on the steps, his weathered face grim. "Now, folks, settle down. We've got a situation, but no cause for alarm. Stage was held up about 5 miles out. Driver's been shot, but he'll live. The others are fine." "Who did it, Sheriff?" someone called out. "Looks like the Blackwell gang again. They've been working this territory for months." A collective groan went through the crowd. The Blackwell gang had been terrorizing the Colorado stage route since spring, leaving a trail of robberies and violence in their wake. "The driver's inside," the sheriff continued. "Doc's with him now, but I can help," Nora spoke up, lifting her medicine bag. "I've treated gunshot wounds before." The crowd parted further, and Sheriff Dale's eyes landed on her. His expression shifted to discomfort, the same look most gave her nowadays. "Doc's handling it, Mrs. O'Malley," he said firmly. From inside the office, a familiar voice called out, "Let her in, Dale. I could use the help." Relief washed over Nora. Dr. Simmons was one of the few in town who still treated her with respect, valuing her knowledge of herbs and healing when others called it witchcraft. As she entered the sheriff's office, she saw the driver stretched out on a wooden table, blood soaking through his shirt at the shoulder. Dr. Simmons was an older man with kind eyes and steady hands, but even he looked overwhelmed. "Bullet went clean through," he informed her. "But he's lost a lot of blood. I need your yarrow poultice." Nora set to work, mixing herbs from her bag and preparing bandages. She worked alongside the doctor with practiced efficiency, aware of the sheriff watching her warily from the corner. "There was a passenger," the driver gasped suddenly, his face pale with blood loss. "Man, headed to Clearwater, he went after them." Sheriff Dale stepped forward. "A passenger went after the Blackwell gang, alone." His tone suggested the man was either brave or stupid. The driver nodded weakly. New fellow, never seen him before, had a rifle and a look in his eye, wouldn't be stopped. Fool's going to get himself killed, muttered the sheriff. I'll gather a posse and head out. An hour later, Nora had helped stabilize the driver and was washing blood from her hands when shouts from outside drew everyone's attention. Sheriff, someone's coming. Nora followed the doctor and sheriff outside to see a rider approaching slowly down the main street. Behind him, draped across a second horse, was a body. As the rider drew closer, Nora could make out a tall man with broad shoulders, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. His duster was splattered with blood, but he sat straight in the saddle with the confidence of someone who'd spent his life on horseback. "That's one of the Blackwell boys," Sheriff Dale exclaimed, recognizing the body on the second horse, dead as can be. The stranger reined his horse to a stop in front of the gathering crowd. "Sheriff," he said with a nod, his voice deep and steady, "found 3 men holding up your stage. This one caught a bullet when he wouldn't drop his gun. The other 2 scattered. You took on the Blackwell gang alone." The sheriff sounded incredulous. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace, revealing a handsome face with a strong jaw and eyes the color of a summer sky. He couldn't have been more than 30. "Name's Finn Keller," he said, removing his hat briefly. "I've been tracking these men for a while now." His gaze drifted over the crowd and landed on Nora, lingering on her blood-stained apron and the medicine bag in her hand. Something unreadable passed across his features. "You a lawman?" Sheriff Dale asked suspiciously. "No," Finn answered simply, "just someone with a score to settle." He turned toward the sheriff. "The driver going to make it? Thanks to Doc Simmons and Mrs. O'Malley here," the sheriff admitted reluctantly. Finn's eyes returned to Nora, more intense this time. "You're a doctor, madam," a midwife, she corrected, lifting her chin slightly. "With some knowledge of medicine," the whispers started immediately. "Herbs and spells, more like," someone muttered just loud enough to be heard. Finn Keller's eyebrows rose slightly, but he simply nodded. "Then I'm grateful for your skills. The driver's a good man." Something about his direct gaze made Nora uncomfortable in a way she couldn't quite identify. It had been a long time since a man, especially one as striking as Finn Keller, had looked at her without judgment or suspicion. "I should get back to my daughter," she said abruptly, turning away. "I'll walk with you," Dr. Simmons offered. "I need to check on that cough of Emma's anyway." As they walked away, Nora could feel Finn Keller's eyes following her. She didn't look back, but something told her their paths would cross again. Over the next few days, news of Finn Keller spread through Clearwater Springs like wildfire. He'd taken a room at the boarding house and, according to Mrs. Peterson, who ran the place, was asking questions about the Blackwell gang. Some said he was a bounty hunter, others whispered darker theories about personal vengeance. Nora tried not to pay attention to the gossip. She had enough troubles of her own. Emma had developed a persistent cough that worried her, and the month's rent was coming due with precious little money to cover it. On Friday morning, Nora was in her small garden behind the cabin, harvesting herbs for Emma's cough syrup, when a shadow fell across the soil. Mrs. O'Malley. She startled, looking up to find Finn Keller standing at her garden gate. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, with a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. "Mr. Keller," she acknowledged, standing quickly and wiping her hands on her apron. "Can I help you?" "I hope so." He removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair that caught the sunlight. "I took a thorn in my hand yesterday. It's festered something fierce." Nora hesitated. A man coming to her for medical help rather than going to Dr. Simmons would only fuel the town's gossip. But she couldn't turn away someone in need. "Come inside, then," she said, leading him to the cabin. Emma was napping in the back room, her breathing slightly labored from the cough. Inside, Nora gestured for him to sit at her small kitchen table while she gathered supplies. The cabin was modest but meticulously clean, with bundles of drying herbs hanging from the rafters and a shelf of carefully labeled jars. "You have quite a collection," Finn observed, looking around. "Nature provides remedies for most ailments if you know where to look." She poured water into a basin and added a few drops from a brown bottle. "Your hand, please." He extended his right hand, palm up. A deep, angry red wound crossed his palm, clearly infected, Nora took his hand in hers, noting the calluses and the warmth of his skin. It had been so long since she'd touched a man. "This will sting," she warned, then began cleaning the wound. To his credit, Finn didn't flinch, though she knew the pain must be considerable. "You have a gentle touch for someone so strong-willed," he commented. Nora glanced up, surprised. "You know nothing about me, Mr. Keller." A small smile played at his lips. "I know more than you might think, Mrs. O'Malley. Small towns talk. And what have they told you?" She applied a poultice to his hand, perhaps with more force than necessary. "That you're a widow. That you refuse to remarry or leave town, despite the difficulty of raising a child alone. That some folks think your healing skills come from somewhere. Unnatural." Nora's hands stilled. "And you believe these things?" Finn's blue eyes held her steadily. "I believe you're a woman doing what she must to survive. I respect that." Before she could respond, Emma's small voice called from the bedroom. "Mama, coming, sweetheart." Nora quickly wrapped Finn's hand. "Keep this clean, change the bandage tomorrow." She stood, businesslike. "There's no charge." Finn rose too, towering over her. "I insist on paying." He placed coins on the table, far more than her services were worth. "That's too much. Not for the only person in town brave enough to face down 3 armed bandits to help a wounded stranger." The corners of his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "Your daughter sounds ill. Get her some proper food with this." Nora wanted to refuse, but Emma's needs outweighed her pride. "Thank you." Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stopped when she saw Finn, curiosity replacing surprise. "Hello there," Finn said, his voice gentling. "You must be Emma." Emma moved to stand behind her mother's skirts, peering around them. "Are you the man who shot the bad people?" "Emma," Nora exclaimed. Finn crouched down to Emma's level. "I'm the man who helped the stagecoach driver. My name's Finn." "My papa was brave too," Emma said simply, "but he died." A shadow crossed Finn's face. "I'm sorry to hear that. It's hard to lose someone you love." Something in his tone made Nora wonder if he spoke from experience. Emma coughed then, a harsh sound that worried Nora. "I should go," Finn said, standing. He put his hat back on and headed for the door. "Thank you for the doctoring, Mrs. O'Malley." "Mr. Keller," Nora called as he stepped outside. "How did you hurt your hand?" He paused, looking back at her with that enigmatic half-smile. Climbing a rose trellis never was much good with flowers. With a tip of his hat, he was gone. Later that afternoon, Nora took Emma to the general store to buy supplies. With Finn's money, she could afford proper food and medicine for Emma's cough. As they entered the store, conversations stopped, and eyes turned to them before quickly looking away. Mr. Grayson, the storekeeper, watched them warily as Nora selected flour, sugar, and coffee. When she approached the counter with Emma at her side, his expression was cold. "Will that be all, Mrs. O'Malley?" he asked stiffly. "And some honey for my daughter's cough, please." As Mr. Grayson reached for the honey, the bell above the door jingled and Finn Keller walked in. The atmosphere in the store immediately shifted, attention turning to the newcomer who'd become something of a local hero for confronting the Blackwell gang. "Afternoon," Finn greeted generally, tipping his hat. His eyes met Nora's briefly before he moved to another counter to examine ammunition. "That'll be $2.30, Mr. Grayson told Nora, his tone suggesting he expected her to haggle or plead for credit, as she sometimes had to. Instead, she counted out the exact amount from Finn's payment. Mr. Grayson's eyebrows rose slightly at the sight of the money, and his eyes flicked between her and Finn. As Nora gathered her purchases, she heard Mrs. Porter, the banker's wife, speaking in a stage whisper to another woman. First witchcraft, now she set her sights on the stranger, shameless with her husband barely cold in his grave. Heat rushed to Nora's cheeks. William had been dead 3 years, not that it was anyone's business. She hurried Emma toward the door, keeping her eyes down. "Mrs. Porter," Finn's voice rang out clearly, stopping Nora in her tracks. "Where I come from, it's considered poor manners to speak ill of those who have done you no harm." The store went silent. Mrs. Porter's face flushed an ugly red. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Mr. Keller." "I think you do." Finn's tone was pleasant, but there was steel beneath it. "Mrs. O'Malley helped save a man's life the other day. Seems to me that deserves respect, not gossip." Mrs. Porter sputtered indignantly. Well, I never, maybe you should, Finn suggested mildly, then turned to the storekeeper. I'll take that tobacco and some of those peppermint sticks for the little lady there. He nodded toward Emma, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. Outside the store, Nora waited with Emma, her heart hammering in her chest. When Finn emerged moments later, she confronted him. I don't need your defense, Mr. Keller. You're only making things worse. Finn handed a peppermint stick to Emma, who accepted it with wonder. Seems to me things were plenty bad before I arrived. You won't be staying, Nora said flatly. But Emma and I will have to live with whatever ripples you cause. Who says I won't be staying? His eyes held a challenge, men like you never do. Nora took Emma's hand. Thank you for the candy. Good day, Mr. Keller. As she walked away, Emma looked back over her shoulder at Finn. I like him, Mama, she said, already sticky with peppermint. Don't get used to him, sweetheart, Nora replied softly. Some people are just passing through our lives. But Finn Keller didn't pass through. Days turned into weeks, and he remained in Clearwater Springs. He took odd jobs helping at the livery stable, fixing the church roof, riding with the sheriff occasionally. People began to accept his presence, and some even started to wonder if he might settle permanently. Nora did her best to avoid him, but in a town the size of Clearwater Springs, their paths crossed frequently. Each time he greeted her with respect and asked after Emma, who had developed a fierce admiration for the tall cowboy with the kind eyes. One Sunday after church, which Nora attended despite the sideways glances and empty pews around her, Pastor Miller approached her with a troubled expression. Mrs. O'Malley, might I have a word? Nora steeled herself. Of course, Pastor. He led her to a quiet corner of the churchyard, his hands fidgeting with his Bible. I've had some concerns expressed by members of the congregation regarding your friendship with Mr. Keller. Pastor Miller wouldn't meet her eyes. A widow in your position must be above reproach. There have been rumors. Anger flashed through Nora. Mr. Keller has been nothing but a gentleman, Pastor. We have barely exchanged more than pleasantries. Nevertheless, appearances, Nora interrupted, her voice low but intense. My husband is 3 years dead. I've worked my fingers raw to provide for my daughter. I've nursed your wife through childbed fever and delivered half the children in this town. And still, I'm judged for a simple conversation with a decent man. The pastor had the grace to look ashamed. I'm merely passing along the concerns, Mrs. O'Malley. Perhaps if you were to consider one of the marriage proposals you've received, from men who want my land but not my child, who expect me to be grateful for their condescension. Nora shook her head. I would rather face the judgment of this town than subject Emma to that kind of household. Pastor Miller sighed. The children's service next week. Perhaps it would be best if Emma didn't attend. The words hit Nora like a physical blow. They were excluding her 5-year-old daughter from a children's church service because of gossip about her mother. I understand, she said, her voice barely steady. Good day, Pastor. She collected Emma, who was playing with the church cat, and walked quickly toward home, fighting tears. They were halfway there when Finn Keller fell into step beside them, leading his horse. Beautiful day for a walk, he commented casually. Not now, Mr. Keller, Nora managed, keeping her eyes forward. Emma, oblivious to her mother's distress, beamed up at him. Mr. Finn. Did you see the kitty at church? Pastor says she catches mice. Is that so? Finn replied, but his eyes were on Nora's face. Emma, would you like to pet my horse? Her name's Sadie. While Emma excitedly stroked the mare's nose, Finn moved closer to Nora. What happened? He asked quietly. Nothing that concerns you. Your eyes say different. His voice was gentle. Was it about me? Nora laughed bitterly. Partly. Apparently, a widow speaking to a single man is cause for scandal. Emma's been uninvited from the children's service. Finn's expression darkened. Because of me. Because this town decided long ago that a woman who chooses independence over remarriage must be wicked. Nora swiped angrily at a tear that escaped. I'm used to it, but Emma. Her voice broke. Without warning, Finn's hand covered hers where it rested at her side. His touch was warm and steady. I'm sorry, I never meant to make things harder for you. The simple kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Nora pulled her hand away. It's not your fault, but now you understand why I asked you not to defend me. Every interaction just gives them more to talk about. Mrs. O'Malley Nora, he said, using her given name for the first time. I don't give a damn what they talk about. Well, I have to, she replied sharply. Emma, come along now, we need to get home. That evening, as Nora tucked Emma into bed, her daughter asked a question that pierced her heart. Mama, why don't the other children play with me? Is it because I don't have a papa? Nora sat on the edge of the small bed, smoothing Emma's dark curls. No, sweetheart, it's because people sometimes don't understand things that are different. Like us. Like us, Nora agreed softly. Mr. Finn likes us, Emma pointed out sleepily. He doesn't think we're different. Mr. Finn hasn't been here long enough to know better, Nora said, but there was no conviction in her words. The truth was, Finn Keller unsettled her in ways she hadn't felt since William courted her. His steady gaze made her feel seen in a town that had been looking through her for years. His defense of her, while unwelcome, stirred something she'd thought long buried, a yearning for companionship, for someone to share her burdens. But men didn't stay. William hadn't meant to leave, but he had. And Finn Keller, with his mysterious past and restless eyes, was surely just passing time in Clearwater Springs until whatever drove him caught up with him. The next morning, Nora was hanging laundry when Sheriff Dale rode up to her cabin. His expression was grim. Morning, Mrs. O'Malley. Is your medicine bag ready? Nora's hands stilled on a wet sheet. What's happened? Blackwell gang hit a homestead about 5 miles out. The Thompsons, it's bad. Cold dread washed over her. The Thompsons had 3 young children. How bad? Mr. Thompson's been shot. Mrs. Thompson too, but not as serious. Doc's already headed out there, but he asked for you specifically, said he needs your poultices. Nora nodded briskly. Give me 5 minutes to gather my things and arrange for Emma. To her surprise, the sheriff shifted uncomfortably. Keller's already offered to stay with your girl. He's waiting at my office with supplies for the Thompsons. Nora hesitated. Leaving Emma with Finn would only fuel the gossip, but there wasn't time to find another solution if the Thompsons were badly hurt. Fine, she decided. Let me speak to Emma and pack my bag. 20 minutes later, Nora entered the sheriff's office with Emma in tow. Finn was there, loading supplies onto a pack horse. He straightened when they entered. Mrs. O'Malley, he greeted her, then smiled at Emma. Hello, Miss Emma. Emma, unusually shy, pressed against her mother's skirts. The sheriff emerged from the back room with rifles. Ready to ride out, Mrs. O'Malley? I've got a gentle mare for you. Nora knelt to Emma's level. I have to go help some people who are hurt, sweetheart. Mr. Keller is going to stay with you until I get back. Be good for him, all right? Emma nodded solemnly. Will you be back for supper? I'll try. Nora hugged her tightly, then stood to address Finn. There's stew in the pot that can be reheated. Emma needs to take her cough syrup before bed. It's on the shelf labeled EC 3 spoonfuls. Finn nodded. We'll be fine, Mrs. O'Malley. You focus on helping the Thompsons. As Nora turned to leave, Emma suddenly clung to her skirts. Mama, don't go. What if the bad men come here? Finn crouched down to Emma's eye level. No bad men will come near you, Emma, I promise. Your mama is very brave to help people who are hurt, isn't she? We need to be brave too so she can do her important work. Emma considered this, then nodded reluctantly. You'll protect us from the bad men. With my life, Finn replied seriously, and something in his tone made Nora believe him completely. The ride to the Thompson homestead was grim and hurried. When they arrived, Dr. Simmons was already working frantically over Mr. Thompson, whose chest was covered in blood. Nora, thank God, the doctor exclaimed when she entered. I need your yarrow and goldenrod poultice. He's been shot twice and I can't stop the bleeding. For the next several hours, Nora worked alongside the doctor, fighting to save Jacob Thompson's life. His wife Sarah had been shot in the arm, but after Nora cleaned and bandaged the wound, she insisted on sitting by her husband's side. Their 3 terrified children huddled nearby. Despite their best efforts, Jacob Thompson died as the sun was setting. His wife's wail of grief shattered the quiet of the homestead, and Nora held her while she sobbed, the children clinging to their skirts. It was well after midnight when Nora finally returned to Clearwater Springs, exhausted and heartsick. The sheriff had stayed behind with a deputy to guard the Thompson place, fearing the Blackwell gang might return. Nora's cabin was dark except for a single lantern in the window. When she entered, she found Finn Keller asleep in a chair by the fireplace, a book open in his lap. He woke instantly at her entrance, alert even in sleep. "Mrs. O'Malley," he said, rising, "is everyone?" She shook her head, too tired to maintain her usual defenses. "Mr. Thompson didn't make it. Mrs. Thompson is a widow now with 3 young children and a homestead to run." Finn's face hardened. "Blackwell, the sheriff thinks so. They took the horses, money, anything valuable." Nora sank into a chair, suddenly bone-weary. "Emma, asleep since 8. She took her medicine without complaint and told me a very detailed story about a princess who rides a horse and saves a town from dragons." A small smile touched his lips. "Brave girl, just like her mother." Unexpected tears welled in Nora's eyes. She tried to blink them away, but the events of the day, combined with Finn's kindness, broke through her carefully maintained composure. Finn moved to her side, concern etched on his features. "Nora," he said softly, using her given name again, "let me make you some tea." She nodded mutely, and he moved to the stove with the familiarity of someone who'd spent the day learning the small cabin's layout. As he worked, Nora found herself studying him, the breadth of his shoulders, the careful way he handled her china teacup, the gentleness that seemed at odds with his obvious strength. "Why are you here, Mr. Keller?" she asked suddenly. "In Clearwater Springs, I mean." He paused, then continued preparing the tea. "Tracking the Blackwell gang. Why, are you a bounty hunter after all?" Finn brought her the tea, then sat across from her. In the dim lantern light, his face looked older, carved with shadows. "No, they killed my brother. A year ago, outside Denver. Stagecoach robbery gone wrong. He was just a passenger heading home to his wife and new baby." Understanding dawned on Nora. "So this is about vengeance." "Justice," he corrected. "My brother was unarmed. They shot him in the back when he tried to protect a woman they were harassing." The quiet conviction in his voice moved something in Nora's heart. "I'm sorry about your brother." Finn nodded, accepting her sympathy. "His wife, my sister-in-law, died 3 months later. Some say of grief, but I think her heart just broke. Their baby boy is with my parents in Kansas now." "And when you found all the Blackwell gang, what then?" His eyes met hers, and for a moment Nora saw a flicker of uncertainty. "I hadn't thought that far ahead." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day pressing down on both of them. Finally, Nora spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for staying with Emma. She's all I have. She's a wonderful child, smart as a whip and kind-hearted. You're doing a remarkable job, Nora, despite what this town thinks." The simple validation, offered so naturally, broke something loose in Nora's chest. A sob escaped her, and to her mortification, she found herself crying in earnest for Jacob Thompson. For his widow facing the same lonely path Nora had walked, for Emma and the cruelty she faced, for all the years of judgment and isolation. Without a word, Finn moved to kneel beside her chair. He didn't touch her, just offered his presence as she wept. When she finally quieted, he spoke softly. "You are the strongest woman I've ever met. Don't let this town break you." Nora wiped her eyes, embarrassed by her outburst. "I should check on Emma." Finn stood, giving her space. "Of course. I'll head back to the boarding house." "It's late," Nora said impulsively. "You can sleep here on the settee. It's the least I can offer after you spent the day with Emma." He studied her face, then nodded. "Thank you." As Nora slipped into the small bedroom she shared with Emma, she found her daughter sleeping peacefully, her small face relaxed in slumber. Nora changed into her nightgown behind the privacy screen, then slid into bed beside Emma, who instinctively curled against her. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Nora. In the main room, she could hear Finn's quiet movements as he settled on the settee. For the first time since William died, a man was under her roof. Instead of feeling threatened or scandalized, Nora felt protected. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. The next morning, Emma was delighted to find Finn still there, and he good-naturedly helped with breakfast before taking his leave. As days passed, Nora found herself in Finn's company more often. He would appear to carry her heavy basket of laundry or bring Emma a book he'd found at the general store. Each small kindness chipped away at the walls Nora had built around her heart. The town noticed, of course. The whispers grew louder, more malicious. "Mrs. Porter and her circle stopped entering any establishment where Nora was present. Pastor Miller delivered a sermon on the dangers of impropriety that had several congregants glancing meaningfully in Nora's direction. Then came the day Nora found Emma in tears behind the schoolhouse, her dress torn and dirt in her hair. "Emma, what happened?" Nora knelt beside her daughter, checking for injuries. "They said you're a witch," Emma sobbed. "They said Mr. Finn is the devil and you're going to hell." Rage, unlike anything Nora had ever felt, surged through her. "Who said this? Who hurt you?" "Billy Simmons and the big boys," Emma hiccuped through her tears. "They pushed me down when I said it wasn't true." Billy Simmons was 13, the son of one of the town councilmen who had been particularly vocal about Nora's inappropriate relationship with Finn Keller. For him to attack a 5-year-old girl was beyond contemptible. Nora gathered Emma into her arms and marched directly to the schoolhouse. Miss Winters, the teacher, looked alarmed when Nora burst in with Emma in her arms. "Mrs. O'Malley." "What? Billy Simmons and his friends assaulted my daughter," Nora declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent classroom. "They pushed her to the ground and told her vicious lies." Miss Winters' face paled. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding." Nora set Emma down and knelt to show the teacher the tears in her dress, the scrapes on her knees. This was deliberate cruelty, encouraged by the hateful gossip of adults who should know better. Billy Simmons stood up, his face red. "She's lying. We didn't do nothing to her." "Sit down, Billy," Miss Winters ordered, then turned to Nora. "Mrs. O'Malley, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No." Nora's voice was steel. "I've kept quiet while this town shunned me for the crime of refusing to remarry. I've endured whispers and insults and lost business, but I will not allow my daughter to be harmed for your prejudice." The classroom door opened and Sheriff Dale entered, followed by Mr. Simmons, Billy's father. "What's all this commotion? Miss Winters, what's going on here?" Before the teacher could answer, Mr. Simmons spotted Nora and Emma, his face contorted with anger. "What's she doing here, causing trouble?" "Your son and his friends attacked my 5-year-old daughter," Nora stated flatly. "Called her mother a witch and pushed her to the ground. I want him punished," Mr. Simmons scoffed. "Boys will be boys. And maybe if you weren't carrying on with that drifter Keller in front of the whole town, giving decent folks reason to talk." "That's enough, George," Sheriff Dale interrupted, surprising everyone. He knelt to Emma's level. "Emma, honey, can you tell me what happened?" Emma, still sniffling, recounted how Billy and 2 other boys had cornered her behind the schoolhouse, taunted her about her mother, and pushed her down when she defended Nora. The sheriff's face grew grim as he listened. When Emma finished, he stood and addressed Billy directly. "Is this true, son?" Billy looked to his father for support, but finding none, he shrugged sullenly. "She's weird. Everyone says her ma's a witch." A collective gasp went through the classroom. Sheriff Dale's expression hardened. "Miss Winters, I suggest you send these boys home with a note to their parents, and perhaps a lesson on Christian charity might be in order." "Now see here, Sheriff," Mr. Simmons blustered. "You can't seriously be taking her side in this. I'm taking the side of a child who was bullied." The sheriff cut him off. "And frankly, George, I'm getting tired of the way this town treats Mrs. O'Malley. She saved Jacob Thompson's life long enough for him to say goodbye to his children. She's delivered half the babies in this town, including your youngest, and all she gets in return is cruelty." Nora stared at the sheriff in shock. He had never openly defended her before. Mr. Simmons wasn't finished. "If she just behaved properly, there wouldn't be talk. But flaunting herself with that Keller fellow, Mr. Keller is a good man who helped me track down one of the Blackwell gang," the sheriff said firmly. "And Mrs. O'Malley is a widow who's done nothing wrong except refuse to bend to this town's expectations." The classroom had gone completely silent. Miss Winters finally spoke up. "Billy, Thomas, and Joseph, you'll stay after school to write letters of apology to Emma, and there will be no recess for a week." Mr. Simmons opened his mouth to object, but Sheriff Dale silenced him with a look. "Come along, George. I think we've disrupted the school day enough." He turned to Nora. "Mrs. O'Malley, would you like me to walk you and Emma home?" Still stunned by his unexpected support, Nora nodded. "Thank you, Sheriff." As they left the schoolhouse, Nora could feel every eye in town on them. The sheriff's open defense of her would be the talk of Clearwater Springs by sundown. "I appreciate what you did in there, Sheriff," Nora said as they walked, "but it will only make the gossip worse." Sheriff Dale sighed. "Mrs. O'Malley, I owe you an apology. I've stood by for too long while this town treated you unfairly. It wasn't right." "What changed your mind?" He glanced down at Emma, who was walking ahead of them, examining a wildflower she'd picked. "Seeing how Keller treats you with respect made me realize how the rest of us haven't. And then watching you fight all night to save Jacob, even after how Sarah Thompson had snubbed you at church." He shook his head. "Made me ashamed of myself." They reached Nora's cabin, where Finn Keller was surprisingly waiting, sitting on the front step. He rose quickly when he saw them approaching, concern evident on his face. "Everything all right, Sheriff?" Nora, the use of her first name wasn't lost on Sheriff Dale, whose eyebrows rose slightly, but he simply nodded to Finn. "Just escorting Mrs. O'Malley and Emma home after a bit of trouble at the school. I'll leave them in your capable hands." As the sheriff departed, Finn turned to Nora. "Trouble?" Emma was bullied because of us. Understanding darkened Finn's expression. "I'm sorry." He knelt to Emma's level. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Sheriff Dale made them stop, and Miss Winters is making them write me sorry letters." She looked up at her mother. "Can I go play with my dolls now?" "Of course, love. I'll call you when lunch is ready." As Emma disappeared inside, Finn stood. "This has to stop, Nora." "It won't," she replied wearily. "Not as long as I'm a widow who refuses to remarry and you're a man who cares for you," he finished quietly, Nora's breath caught. They'd been dancing around this for weeks, the growing connection between them, the way his presence had become a comfort rather than a threat. "Finn, you're here for the Blackwell gang. Once you've found them all, you'll move on. And Emma and I will still be here, dealing with the aftermath." "What if I didn't leave?" His voice was earnest, his eyes intent on hers. "What if I stayed in Clearwater Springs?" Hope, dangerous and bright, flared in Nora's chest. She tamped it down ruthlessly. "Why would you do that?" "Because for the first time since my brother died, I've found something worth staying for." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Someone worth staying for." Nora shook her head, fighting the pull she felt toward him. "You don't know what you're saying." "This town will never accept." "I don't give a damn what this town accepts," Finn interrupted, his voice low and intense. "I care about you, Nora, and Emma, more than I thought possible after losing so much." Finn, the rest of her protest was cut off by a shout from the direction of town. They both turned to see a rider galloping toward them, one of the sheriff's deputies. "Keller," the deputy called, reining in his horse. "Sheriff needs you now. Blackwell gang's been spotted at the Carson place just north of town." Finn's posture changed instantly, tension radiating through his body. "How many?" "4 men. Sheriff's gathering a posse, but he asked for you specifically." Finn turned to Nora, conflict evident in his eyes. "I have to go." She nodded, fear replacing the warmth that had been building between them. "Be careful." He hesitated, then suddenly leaned in and pressed a swift, hard kiss to her lips. Before she could react, he was already mounting his horse. "We'll finish this conversation when I get back," he promised, then rode off with the deputy. Nora stood frozen, her fingers touching her lips where the warmth of his kiss still lingered. Part of her wanted to call him back, to tell him not to go, that revenge wasn't worth his life. But she knew he wouldn't listen. The Blackwell gang had taken his brother. He wouldn't rest until they faced justice. Inside the cabin, Emma was playing contentedly with her dolls. Nora busied herself with preparing lunch, trying not to think about Finn riding into danger. She'd lost one man she cared for. She wasn't sure her heart could bear losing another. Hours passed with no word. Nora put Emma to bed that night with assurances that Finn was fine, even as doubt gnawed at her own heart. She sat by the window, watching the road into town, jumping at every sound. Just after midnight, hoofbeats approached the cabin. Nora rushed outside to find Sheriff Dale dismounting, his face grim in the moonlight. "Sheriff, what happened? Is Finn Keller's alive?" he assured her quickly. "But he's been shot. Doc Simmons is with him now." Relief and fresh fear warred within her. "How bad?" "Took a bullet to the shoulder, lost a lot of blood, but Doc thinks he'll pull through." The sheriff hesitated. He was asking for you, Mrs. O'Malley, quite insistent about it. Nora glanced back at the cabin. Emma's asleep, I can't leave her. I'll stay with her, the sheriff offered, surprising her. You go on to Doc's, Keller. Well, he might need your particular skills right now. 20 minutes later, Nora was hurrying into Dr. Simmons' surgery, her medicine bag clutched in her hands. The doctor looked up from where he was bandaging Finn's shoulder, relief evident on his tired face. Nora, thank goodness. His shoulder's a mess. I could use your yarrow poultice to stop the bleeding. Finn was conscious but pale, his normally tanned face ashen with blood loss. His eyes found hers immediately, and something in them eased when he saw her. Told you we'd finish our conversation, he said weakly. Nora moved to his side, professional concern overtaking her personal feelings. Be quiet and let me work. She began preparing her poultice, addressing the doctor. What happened? Dr. Simmons sighed. Ambush. The report of Blackwell at the Carson place was a trap. They were waiting for the posse. Anyone else hurt? Deputy Williams took a graze to the arm. Sheriff's fine. They got 2 of the Blackwell gang dead. The other 2 escaped, including Jed Blackwell himself. Nora applied her poultice to Finn's wound, noting the damage. The bullet had gone clean through, but it had torn muscle and likely chipped bone. He'll need weeks to recover, she told the doctor. I'm right here, Finn protested weakly. And I can't wait weeks. Blackwell's still out there. You'll wait as long as it takes, Nora said firmly, meeting his stubborn gaze, or you'll tear that shoulder open and bleed to death. Dr. Simmons excused himself to check on Deputy Williams, leaving them alone. Finn reached up with his good hand and caught Nora's wrist. I thought I might die out there, he said softly, and all I could think about was that I hadn't told you. Told me what? Nora whispered, her heart pounding. That I love you. That I want to stay in Clearwater Springs, not for revenge, but for you and Emma. His blue eyes held hers intently. I know it won't be easy. This town has made up its mind about you, about us, but I don't care. Tears filled Nora's eyes. Finn, you can't just— I can, he insisted. I lost my brother to violence and watched his wife die of heartbreak. I've seen how fragile life is. I'm not wasting another day pretending I don't love you, Nora O'Malley. Before she could respond, the surgery door burst open, and Pastor Miller rushed in, followed by several town council members, including Mr. Simmons. There you are, Pastor Miller said accusingly to Nora. Sheriff Dale said we'd find you here. Nora straightened, placing herself protectively between Finn and the intruders. What is the meaning of this? Mr. Simmons stepped forward. The town council has met in emergency session. We've decided it's time you leave Clearwater Springs, Mrs. O'Malley. Shock rendered Nora momentarily speechless. Finn struggled to sit up behind her, grimacing in pain. What the hell are you talking about, Simmons? This doesn't concern you, Keller, Mr. Simmons replied coldly. Though your liaison with Mrs. O'Malley has certainly contributed to the problem. Pastor Miller at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mrs. O'Malley, we've been patient with your unconventional situation, but the incident at the school today was the final straw. Your presence is disruptive to the moral fabric of our community. Anger replaced Nora's shock. My presence? What about the presence of gossips and hypocrites who call themselves Christians while persecuting a widow and her innocent child? Mr. Simmons' face darkened. We're prepared to be generous. We'll give you fair market value for your cabin and land. You can make a fresh start elsewhere. My husband built that cabin with his own hands, Nora said, her voice shaking with fury. Emma was born there. It's our home, and I will not be driven from it by small-minded bullies. Then we'll take other measures, Mr. Simmons threatened. No one in town will do business with you. No supplies, no customers for your midwifery. How long do you think you and your daughter will survive then? Finn managed to stand, swaying slightly as he moved to Nora's side. That sounds remarkably like extortion, Simmons. I wonder what the territorial judge would make of it. Stay out of this, Keller, Pastor Miller warned. You're not a permanent resident of this town. Actually, Finn said, his voice gaining strength despite his pallor, I'm thinking of becoming one. I've had my eye on the old Jenkins place just outside town, planning to buy it tomorrow. A murmur went through the group. The Jenkins place was one of the largest properties in the area, with good water rights and grazing land. What for? Demanded Mr. Simmons suspiciously. To start a horse ranch. I've got savings from my army days and my family back east is willing to invest. Finn's gaze hardened. And to marry Mrs. O'Malley if she'll have me. The room went completely silent. Nora turned to stare at him, her heart in her throat. Finn, she whispered. You don't have to, I want to, he said quietly, just for her. I meant what I said, Nora. I love you and Emma. I want us to be a family. Mr. Simmons recovered first. This is absurd. You barely know the woman. I know everything that matters, Finn replied, never taking his eyes from Nora's. I know she's brave and kind and fiercely protective of her daughter. I know she helps people who have shown her nothing but cruelty because it's the right thing to do. And I know that any town foolish enough to drive her away deserves to lose her. The door opened again, and Sheriff Dale entered, surveying the tense scene. Gentlemen, this is a place of healing, not a town hall. I suggest you take your business elsewhere. Pastor Miller hesitated, then addressed Nora directly. Mrs. O'Malley will expect your decision by the end of the week. With that, he led the others out, leaving only Sheriff Dale behind. The sheriff looked from Nora to Finn. Sorry about that. I didn't realize they were planning an ambush of their own. He tipped his hat. For what it's worth, Mrs. O'Malley, not everyone in town agrees with them. The Thompsons are particularly vocal in their support of you after what you did for Jacob. After the sheriff left, Nora helped Finn back onto the examination table. You shouldn't have stood up. You could have torn your stitches. Some things are worth bleeding for, he replied, wincing as she checked his bandages. I meant it, Nora, every word. Nora's hands trembled as she worked. You proposed to me in front of half the town council just to protect me from their threats. No, Finn said firmly, capturing her hand. I proposed because I love you. The timing was, admittedly, impulsive, but my feelings aren't. She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of doubt. You'd be taking on a ready-made family, a child who isn't yours, a town that may never fully accept us. Emma already feels like mine, he said simply, and as for the town. He shrugged, then winced at the movement. They can either accept us or shun us together. I don't much care which. Tears spilled onto Nora's cheeks. I can't let you sacrifice your future for us. Nora, Finn said gently, you and Emma are my future, if you'll have me. For 3 years, Nora had been strong for Emma, for herself, for their survival. She'd faced down gossip and suspicion, worked until her hands bled, gone to bed hungry so her daughter could eat. She'd told herself she didn't need anyone, that independence was worth the isolation. But looking at Finn, wounded and pale but unflinching in his declaration, she realized that strength sometimes meant allowing yourself to need someone else. Yes, she whispered, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Yes, I'll marry you. Finn's smile lit his entire face. He pulled her close with his good arm and kissed her properly this time, a kiss full of promise and healing and hope. Dr. Simmons cleared his throat from the doorway, looking both embarrassed and pleased. I see my patient is recovering nicely, he observed dryly. Nora pulled away, blushing. Doctor, no need for explanations, Nora, the doctor interrupted kindly. Love is the best medicine I know, though in Mr. Keller's case I'd recommend rest as well. That shoulder needs time to heal. Then he'll stay with us, Nora decided impulsively. I can tend to his wound, and there's the small guest room we never use. Dr. Simmons raised an eyebrow. That will certainly give the town something new to talk about. Let them talk, Finn said, squeezing Nora's hand. Let them shun us together. The next morning, Nora helped Finn to her cabin, where Emma was overjoyed to see him and even more excited when told he would be staying with them while he recovered. Sheriff Dale had arranged for Finn's belongings to be brought from the boarding house, and by afternoon, he was settled in the small guest room that had previously been used for storage. True to his word, Finn sent a letter and funds to his banker in Denver, instructing him to purchase the Jenkins property. Within a week, despite still recovering from his wound, he had hired men to begin repairs on the farmhouse and fencing. The news spread through Clearwater Springs like wildfire. Finn Keller was staying, and he was serious about marrying the widow O'Malley. Town opinion divided sharply. Some, like Mr. Simmons and his supporters, were openly hostile. Others, particularly those Nora had helped with her healing skills, began to cautiously show support. Mrs. Thompson, newly widowed herself, made a point of calling on Nora to thank her for trying to save her husband and to invite Emma to play with her children. Pastor Miller, caught between the factions, finally approached Nora and Finn after Sunday services 3 weeks after the confrontation. "Mr. Keller, Mrs. O'Malley," he greeted them awkwardly. "I want to apologize for my part in the incident at the doctor's office. Upon reflection and prayer, I believe I failed in my Christian duty to you both." Finn, his arm still in a sling but otherwise recovering well, regarded the pastor steadily. "Apology accepted, Pastor. I understand the pressure you were under." "Will you still be performing wedding ceremonies next month?" Nora asked directly. Pastor Miller looked surprised, then nodded. "Of course, are you?" "We'd like to be married the first Saturday of next month, if that's agreeable," Finn stated, "here in the church with all the usual ceremony." The pastor's eyebrows rose. "You understand that not everyone in the congregation will—" "We don't need everyone," Nora interrupted. "Just you to make it legal and blessed. Those who wish to attend will, and those who don't won't." After a moment of consideration, Pastor Miller nodded. "Very well, the first Saturday it is. We can discuss the details later this week." As they walked home with Emma skipping ahead of them, Finn took Nora's hand. "Are you sure about this? We could go to the next town over, have a quieter ceremony." Nora shook her head. "No. Clearwater Springs is our home, Emma's and mine. I won't be chased away, and I won't hide our marriage as if it's something shameful." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, I want those who have whispered behind my back for years to see that love can grow even in hostile soil." The wedding day dawned clear and bright. To Nora and Finn's surprise, the church was nearly full. Not everyone had come to support them. Some were surely there out of curiosity, or even to disapprove, but many familiar faces smiled genuinely as Nora walked down the aisle in a simple blue dress, Emma preceding her with a basket of wildflowers. Finn waited at the altar, his shoulder healed enough that he'd discarded the sling, dressed in a new suit that made him look every inch the prosperous rancher he was becoming. The joy in his eyes when he saw Nora approaching made her forget everyone else in the church. "Dearly beloved," Pastor Miller began, his voice carrying to every corner of the building, "we are gathered here today in the sight of God and this community." The emphasis on community was subtle but unmistakable. Whatever their personal feelings, the people of Clearwater Springs were witnessing this union, this new family forming before their eyes. When it came time for the vows, Finn's voice rang out clear and confident. "I, Finnegan James Keller, take thee, Nora Elizabeth O'Malley, to be my wedded wife. I promise to love and cherish you, to protect and provide for you and Emma, to be a father to her and a husband to you, for all the days of my life." Tears blurred Nora's vision as she repeated her own vows, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. When Pastor Miller pronounced them husband and wife, Finn's kiss was gentle but filled with promise. As they turned to face the congregation, Finn bent down and lifted Emma into his arms. "And now," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, "we are a family." The celebration afterward was held at the Jenkins place, now the Keller Ranch. The old farmhouse had been repaired and freshly painted, with a new bedroom added for Emma. Those who attended the wedding came to the reception, along with others who hadn't quite been brave enough to show their support in church. As the evening wound down, Nora found herself standing on the porch with Finn, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Emma was inside, being fussed over by Mrs. Thompson and several other women who had finally decided that the little girl deserved their kindness. "Happy, Mrs. Keller?" Finn asked, slipping his arm around her waist. The name still felt new and wonderful. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Nora admitted, leaning into his embrace. "You know, not everyone in town has come around," he said thoughtfully. "Some still look at us sideways." "Let them," Nora replied, turning in his arms to face him. "Let them shun us together. We have each other, we have Emma, we have this beautiful home. What more could we need?" Finn's smile was tender as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Nothing at all, though perhaps in time a brother or sister for Emma wouldn't go amiss." Nora laughed, a sound of pure joy that seemed to echo across the open land around them. Perhaps so, Mr. Keller. Perhaps so. In the months and years that followed, the Keller ranch prospered. Finn's knowledge of horses proved valuable, and soon ranchers from across the territory were coming to buy his stock. Nora continued her midwifery, now with the full support of her husband, and eventually opened a small clinic in town where she taught other women her healing skills. Emma grew into a confident, kind-hearted girl who no longer faced whispers or cruelty. She was joined by a brother, William Finnegan Keller, born almost exactly a year after their wedding, and later by twin sisters who had their mother's skill with herbs and their father's way with horses. And while there were always some in Clearwater Springs who remembered the days when Nora O'Malley had been shunned for raising her child alone, most came to respect the Kellers as vital members of the community, a family built not on convention, but on courage and love that had withstood the harshest judgment and emerged stronger for it. For Nora and Finn, that was victory enough. They had faced the world's scorn together and built a life of joy in its shadow, proving that sometimes the things people shun most fiercely are precisely the things most worth fighting for.